Hello guys, this is your friend. And we are back with our new fanfic. Which is, what if Kurama gave Naruto a rare summoning contract? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button. And please subscribe to the channel, it motivates me to upload more fanfics like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. Konoha, on most days, was a beautiful town. With its high walls, and bright sunlight illuminating the village, most were struck by its natural beauty. Trees were plentiful, and birds chirping in the soft breeze that would occasionally flow through. The place was large, with high building structures, most a light tan-colored, and busy markets. People overflowed the place, and shouts could be heard as marketers bargained for the best prices. On the outskirts of the town was several training grounds, with large fields, and blooming trees surrounding them. On the very back wall stood a tall cliff, with a building jutting out of the side. The cliff contained faces of 4 men, the great Hokages. On top of one of these stood a boy wearing an orange jumpsuit, and a paint can in hand. Around him stood 2 cloaked men, both wearing dark cloaks and animal masks. One of these animal masks was of a badger, while the other one of a hawk. The boy stood there, rubbing the back of his neck and leaning back with a somewhat sheepish expression on his face as he stared at the 2 men. The young boy's hair was a bright blonde, and he had tan skin that seemed sun-kissed by the sun god himself. The oddest thing about him, however, was the 3 whisker marks that adorned his cheeks, along with his bright blue eyes that were the color of the ocean. "Hey," the boy said to the 2 masked men, his voice high-pitched. "I haven't done anything wrong yet. How can I be in trouble if I haven't done anything?" The 2 men looked at each other before Badger Face spoke. "Uzumaki Naruto, you have pulled this prank before and you are the only one stupid enough to do it again. Why would you disgrace the Hokage's faces, with paint, and still expect to get away with it?" "Well, you see," the boy countered, his voice becoming more and more high-pitched by the second, simply out of nervousness. "I think it would look better with a splash of orange. They're too bland, and boring to look at. No color besides the dirt brown." Hawk Face sighed before quickly reaching over and grabbing the paint and brushes from Naruto. "Come with us to the Hokage's office, Uzumaki," he said before the blonde boy could interrupt him. With much grumbling from Naruto, they climbed down the cliffside, and made their way through the busy streets with Naruto in front of the 2 Anbu. The crowd bustled around the 3 and people shouted over other people to be heard. The 2 Anbu soon lost sight of Naruto and ran around searching for him for a minute or 2. They soon caught sight of him standing near the Hokage tower with a smirk on his face. The entrance behind him, Naruto turned to the 2 masked ninja and his grin widened. "What are you smiling about?" Badger Face asked, curious as to what the boy was happy about. That grin was sly, almost like a fox's, and sent shivers up the man's spine. He was trained to be without fear, without emotion, and yet that smirk was too much like the Kyuubi's for his liking. "Oh, nothing," Naruto said as he examined his nails in a show of boredom. "Just that a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, could fool you so easily." And with that, he disappeared in a puff of white smoke. The 2 turned around and started their frantic search once more for the ninja known as Naruto Uzumaki. Meanwhile, sitting in a ramen stand known as Ichiraku's Ramen, was said boy, with a bowl of the Naruto special ramen in front of him. He chugged it down, barely using the chopsticks at all as he drained the entire bowl. Loud slurping noises could be heard as he finished the bowl of food and turned to the waitress and daughter of the owner of the stand. "Ayame-chan, can I get another bowl of your finest ramen, please?" he begged of the beautiful and nice girl in front of him. She shook with laughter and tried to control it. "Naruto-kun, no need to ask for more. My dad's already in the back preparing another 10 bowls as we speak. We know how you are." Her voice tinkled like an airy bell as she talked to the younger boy in front of her. "Sorry," he said, wiping his face off from all of the ramen juice. No need to be sorry. Naruto-kun, you bring us the most business in town. We've made a small fortune off of the people you have brought in here so far, and that's not even counting you, so no. There's no need to be sorry, she retorted, a smile on her face as her laughter had faded off. She's right, Naruto, her father said as he peeked his head out from the kitchen. You're our biggest customer here. Thanks, old man Ichiraku. You too, Ayame, he started, but was cut off by the entrance of another customer. Uzumaki, it's time for your visit with the Hokage, said a voice that Naruto instantly recognized as the hawk-masked Anbu. The boy whirled around in his seat to see the ninja staring at him. And this time, you're not getting away. He added on. Sorry, Ayame, old man, but I gotta run. Put this on Iruka-sensei's tab for me, will ya? He said before forming the ram symbol with his hands, and before the Anbu could do anything, 10 Narutos started running out of the entrance and in opposite directions. Several of them were immediately cut off by Hawk Face, and several more by Badger Face, who was not far behind, but 3 shadow clones remained. One of the Anbus ran after a clone, while the other ran after a clone that was headed to the stadium. The third clone ran towards the training grounds freely. After a minute of chase, Hawk Face finally grabbed the clone, and it vanished in a poof of smoke. The other was taken down by a kunai from Badger Face. The third clone made it to the training ground, and hid in the nearby brush. Naruto backed further into the tree line, hoping to hide himself from the Anbu, but ecstatic that he was able to pull this off. Anbu were some of the highest trained ninja, the ninja elite, and he had just escaped 2 of them, not once, but twice. Wow, he thought to himself. I must have the best luck in the whole village. Unluckily, however, his foot chose that exact moment to trip over something that was half buried in the ground. He felt himself fall back, and awaited impact on the hard ground, but it never came. He opened his clenched eyes to see the strangest sight. He was knee-deep in water, and he seemed to be in a sewer of sorts. Hello, he called out only to have it echo around the tunnel he was in. What is this place? He thought to himself, only to hear a loud growl come from the end of the tunnel. The growl was fierce, like that of a caged animal, and he wondered what could make that kind of sound. Where am I? He called out to the darkness around him. Again the growl sounded, but this time louder. He turned away from the end of the tunnel from which the growl was coming, only to meet with a dead end. Sighing to himself, he headed courageous ly to the source of the growling noise. He could feel the water moving around him, seemingly pushing him to the noise, and could hear the splashing sound from his movements, but oddly enough, didn't feel the water's chill. As he was nearing the tunnel's end, he could hear an inhuman chuckle reverberate from the walls around him. Silly human, a distinctly feminine, yet cold and evil voice said from only a few yards away. You dare wander onto my territory. The territory of the greatest Biju to ever live. The territory of the Kyubu no Kitsune, the 9-tailed fox. Naruto felt a chill run up his spine at that name, but he knew that he couldn't back out now. Still the thought registered in his mind. Maybe I can just wake myself up. That'll work out. I bet this is a nightmare. I know I fell and hit my head on the ground, so maybe this is a dream that I'll wake up from here soon. But a smarter voice registered itself in his head, and its voice rang loud and clear. If this is a nightmare, why not investigate the noise? After all, nothing can hurt you in your dreams, right? His feet unconsciously pulled him forward, unknowingly. He looked up, expecting to see the end of the tunnel, only to be disappointed at the great hall he was in. The room was bare, with the knee-length water in it, and ceilings and walls that seemed to stretch on endlessly before giving in to the darkness around them. There was barely any light at all, making the possibility of seeing anything else impossible, except for the sight right in front of him. On the far wall was a giant iron cage. No doors, no gates, no way to get out. A single piece of paper binded to the middle of the giant cage was the only thing holding it together. Behind the cage, Naruto got the feeling that evil was lurking, not helped by the giant red eyes glaring down at him. The eyes were cold, the color of blood, and seemingly endless, a murderer's eyes. Insolent human, how dare you approach the great Kyuubi in such a manner? The feminine voice rang out yet again, coming from behind the bars of the cage. Oh, yeah, well if you're so great, then why are you stuck in a cage? Naruto replied, gathering courage and strength from the idea that this was a dream. Suddenly, the creature struck out, jumping forward and lashing out between the bars with a giant orange paw. Deep growls and curses came from the fox as it tried to attack Naruto. For a moment, light shined through the bars and a scary sight was saw. A giant orange fox, easily the size of Konoha, with 9 tails behind it whipping out. Each tail was extremely long, longer than Naruto could comprehend as he fell back on his rear trying to escape from the beast. He thought he may have been dreaming before, but this eliminated any idea of such a thing now. There was no way a dream could inspire such fear in him. And the wind he felt off of the paw, wind he actually felt coming from the creature trying to get to him. It was unreal. If it wasn't for this cage, then this creature would be devastatingly destructive. He had no doubt that it could bring Konoha to its knees, much less the rest of the great nations. Where am I? He said as he stood up, mere feet from the giant paw trying to swipe at him. An evil chuckle was heard as the paw retracted to its owner and the Kubi sat on its haunches with a gleeful look in its eye. Your mind, insolent human. You are in your own mind. My mind, Naruto replied, glaring daggers at the fox, his voice seething. Number 1. Why would my mind be a sewer? And number 2. If it's my mind, what the hell are you doing here, you crazy demon? Anger was building up in him at this outrageous thoughts. If it were my choice, boy, the fox sneered as it continued. I would not be stuck inside the stomach of a human. But this is thanks to that damn Yondaime Hokage, and stupid Shinigami. If it were not for them, your village would be leveled and everybody in it dead. And as for your other question, the fox snorted. This is your mindscape, boy, not mine. I do not fathom the simple workings of your impudent brain, nor do I wish to. Well, whatever, Naruto harumphed as he sat, rather unceremoniously, on his rear and crossed his arms. He avoided the fox's eyes as he sat thinking to himself. What the hell am I supposed to do now? He thought to himself. I do not know, child, but as it is, you are getting on my nerves. Kyuubi looked at Naruto's stunned expression, before explaining. This is a mindscape, so your thoughts are automatically projected outward. In other words, Naruto trailed off. You have no private thoughts while here. Everything you think will be heard as clear as if you had shouted it. The fox finished for him, a smirk playing upon its lips, showing razor-sharp fangs. The boy turned so his back was to the fox and sat thinking nothing to himself while Kyuubi relaxed, getting into a more comfortable position, and then swinging its paw through the gate, trying to reach Naruto. The paw would get only an inch away, before it could reach no more, and the fox would start all over again. The only sounds heard were Kyuubi's paw hitting the water, and the drip-drip of water droplets. This continued for several more minutes, which to the extremely bored pair, seemed like hours. Finally Naruto spoke up. Hey, fox. When can I get out of here? I do not know, boy, but it seems to be taking a while. Maybe if you moved an inch or so back, I could claw you up enough that you would wake up. That or I'd kill you. Either way, I win. The fox spoke, a grin stretching its way onto her face. Yeah, right. Hey, since we're stuck here, can I ask you a question? Why not, boy? Kyuubi replied, curious as to what the boy wanted to know. Everyone said that the Kyuubi no Kitsune was a boy, not a girl. The great fox cut him off. And what? You all think that it has to be a man that is strong, not a female. I could cut your head off for such insolence. The it spoke harshly, the words themselves were meaningless, and they both knew it. Fine, Naruto said, waving his hand. But what was that thing I tripped on? Child, I do not know. But if my guess is right, I want you to take it and hide it. The fox was cut off as a sucking noise was heard and the boy vanished from sight. Kyuubi sighed and laid back, ready to take a nap and be done with the whole ordeal, and hoped that when it woke up, it would have realized this was all a dream. Unfortunately for him, this was not to be, as he heard a loud noise sounding like Naruto. As Naruto laid on the ground panting, he pondered over what the fox had been saying. What did he mean when he said he wanted me to hide it? What is it in the first place? Finally, after a few minutes, he had had enough of laying around doing nothing, and decided to see what it was that he had tripped over. Climbing to his feet, he walked a couple of yards over and looked at what was buried in the ground. His curiosity got the better of him as he got down on his hands and knees to get a good look. The top half that was sticking out of the ground was shaped like a cylinder, and made of thick paper. In the center of the rolled up paper was a black piece of wood. With a start, he realized that it was some type of scroll. Quickly, he used his hands to start digging the rest of the scroll out. After a few minutes, his nails bloody and torn, but quickly healing, he pulled the scroll out the rest of the way. As it came out of the ground, he saw that it had red markings going around the side of it, with symbols he couldn't make out, and some he could. He recognized the kanji for death, destruction, and not least of all, foxes. Excitement in him, he started to unroll the scroll and saw even stranger kanji on the inside of it. What the heck kind of scroll is this? He spoke out loud, not really expecting an answer. It's a summoning scroll, brat, a voice snarled inside his head. He turned around, half expecting someone to be playing a trick on him. However, there was no one in sight. I must be going crazy, he thought, and then jumped when the voice sounded again. Brat, you are a pure lunatic if you do not recognize my voice after having just spoke to me mere moments ago. Kyuubi, he whispered, half hoping that this was now some trick and that he did not have to deal with a bloodthirsty fox inside his head. Quiet, brat. Do you not understand that this village still trembles at my name, and that a mere utterance of it, and the villagers would be trying to hunt you down once more? The harsh voice of the fox sounded. I can hear your thoughts, boy, so there is no need for you to speak out loud and cause us both trouble. Fine then, Kyuubi, he spat the name of the fox. What the hell kind of scroll is this? The fox seemed to ponder for a few moments, actually keeping quiet, before coming to a conclusion. My guess would be that it is a summoning scroll, and if I'm not mistaken, a fox summoning scroll. Not to be taken lightly, child, so I suggest you tread on water here. Naruto observed this, before finally opening the scroll all the way and looking at it. In the center was a spiral shape, with fox tails pointing outward from it, too many to count. Naruto stared at the picture, his mouth drooling, and eyes glazed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't look away. The fox tails seemed to move the more he stared at it, and he wondered what was going on. Snap out of it, Kit. This has a genjutsu on it. Even with that knowledge in his mind, Naruto still couldn't look away. He stared on, and the spiral in the center seemed to twirl and grow. Remembering something he had learned in class, he pulled out a kunai and sliced his own arm open. The stinging pain brought him back to reality as he examined his self-inflicted wound. Within a second or two more, it closed up, but blood still leaked down and his eyes followed the trail it made. The blood poured out down directly onto the scroll and it quivered for a few seconds, before rolling together into the center of the scroll. It traced the outline of the spiral, and made it glow in a red color. Well, he heard the fox say with a sigh. At least you broke out of the genjutsu, kid. And, since you already made a blood sacrifice, you might as well sign it and be done with it. What am I supposed to sign it with? I don't have a pen or anything. With your blood, Kit. The eerie feeling of a blood contract sent shivers down his spine, but he knew that this would make him more powerful and he needed that. If he ever wanted to be a Hokage, he needed to be able to protect the village, and to do that you have to be the most powerful ninja there. This was just one more step in the ladder. He reached down and squeezed his arm for a minute, letting the blood drop before using his finger to write his name in it. His finger blood-soaked, and the contract signed, he wondered what he was supposed to do now. He moved his arm, and wiped it on the grass. It wasn't the most sanitary thing, but it would do for now. Now, Kyuubi chose this moment to answer the boy's question. You go home and get ready for training. This may be your day off, but you need to go outside the village to practice your summoning skills. Ram, horse, dog, Naruto repeated to himself as a mantra as he tried for the summoning. He placed his hand on the ground, and in a puff of smoke there sat a small fox the size of his hand. It immediately started crying and Naruto covered his ears for protection against the wailing. In a few more seconds though, the little fox vanished. Damn it, Naruto cursed. Why the hell can't I get this right? You need my chakra. Fool, if you want to summon more than those small creatures, the fox told him once more. This had been going on for an hour and so far, Naruto had yet to summon more than the small kit that had appeared every time. Kyuubi would try to get Naruto to use her chakra, but Naruto would always refuse, saying he would do this on his own, and without any help. The answer is still no. The Kyuubi settled itself in for a nap, knowing this would take a very long while without its help. Whatever, Kit, but wake me when you finally decide you need help or summon anything else besides these small rodents not even worthy of the energy it takes. Whatever, fox. Again, Naruto tried to summon the foxes from the contract, biting the finger on his right hand and frumming the hand seals. He threw his hand to the ground and small black marks spread out, and in a puff of smoke, there stood a fox, only about a foot tall, with two tails waving around on it. It was black, with a white streak running down its forehead, and red tips on the ends of its tails. Naruto could barely move at the fact that he finally summoned something, but when he did, he jumped up in the air and punched his fist upwards. Yes, he shouted out. I finally did it. I told that stupid fox I would and I was right. Wahoo! The fox on the ground turned to Naruto. What did you say about a stupid fox? It hissed out at him. I am not a stupid fox. I am the son of Zirlda, the great six tails, and you would do well to remember that. What? Naruto asked, turning to the creature in front of him. No, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about Kyuubi. Kyuubi, as in the great Kyuubi. Yeah, Naruto told the fox. Although I wouldn't call her so great. Shut up you fool, Kyuubi told Naruto. I am great, and you would do well to remember that. The small fox's eyes in front of Naruto widened in disbelief. It looked at Naruto for a few moments and bowed down in front of him. What are you doing? Naruto asked the fox. Wait, did you just hear her? The fox nodded his head in acknowledgement. How? Kit, he can hear me because I am Kyuubi. I started the clan you know as foxes. And did you say you are Zirlda's son? Kyuubi addressed the quivering fox. Again the fox nodded, and Naruto had to wonder if it was even capable of speech at this point. Then, child, you would know me as your grandmother. Naruto was almost speechless at this new revelation. Key word. Almost. Grandchild. He all but shouted out loud. He knew that the fox was old, but not that old. It finally raised the question of how old this demon really was. The Kyuubi internally quirked an eyebrow at Naruto before sighing. Yes, grandchild, it snapped at Naruto. As for how old I am millennia older than you, this pathetic village you call home, even older than humanity itself. I am wise beyond years, and in that time, do you not think that at one point I would produce offspring to carry on my legacy? But there aren't any giant foxes for you to mate with, Naruto offered as an excuse. At least not any that I can think of. And besides, I doubt people would be to not notice two giant foxes going at it. The small fox on the ground before Naruto stopped trembling, finally, and stood on its legs to face him. What? The Kyuubi is the start of foxes, with none born before her. Alone, she conceived, and birthed the great Zirlda, Zethia, and Zemer. They, in turn, bore children and great-grandchildren until you see the normal fox that is today. Hold on a minute, Naruto complained, cradling his head in his hands. All this information is giving me a headache. Both foxes were silent for a moment, the small fox on the ground sitting on its haunches, its two black and red tails moving in random patterns as it stared at the human in front of it. Let me get this straight, Naruto repeated to the fox. There are more of you. Yes, several, the fox acknowledged with a tilt of its head. I am one of the few males born directly from the Great Three. Zirlda has had two children, myself, and of course my baby sister, Zeldarelza. I am the sole heir to the Fox Kingdom, and Zeldarelza the next in line. The only other males besides myself are Zemer, the Fox Prince, and his son, Zebra. Ah yes, it brings back great memories to hear those names. All of my children, grandchildren, and the accomplishments they achieved, the fox spoke lazily, drawn into her own thoughts. They all sat there, mulling over things for several hours as they thought of what they had all learned that day. Naruto mostly leaned back in his standard pose, hands behind head, and leaning back lazily. The small fox in front of him laying on its belly with its two tails wrapped around him. And lastly, Kyuubi was in its cell, pondering over all that has happened with this child, Naruto, and how he might finally be the one to bring back the mighty foxes and show the world their power. The boy might actually do it. And to think, I thought of him as a weakling with no sense of anything. Well, Naruto said, yawning as he stretched. It's time for me to head home. I've got training tomorrow and I need the rest if I'm going to prove I truly am a great ninja. I must be on my way as well, Zelda, the small kid told Naruto. If you need assistance in battle, call upon my aid and I will help to the best of my ability. To summon my mom for battle, however, you would need to talk to her first. From this point on, I will be your familiar. Whatever, kits, I am ready for my sleep, Kyuubi said as it started fading into a slumber. Naruto relaxed as he felt the demon withdraw completely inside him, and then looked at the sky, noting the dark blue with twinkling lights dancing in them. Naruto waved goodbye to the small kit. He sighed as he started his walk home, walking just like Shikamaru usually did when cloud gazing. Unknown to him, the small black fox was tailing him, and not returning to the summoning world like it knew it should. For some reason the fox, Zelda, felt drawn to this child, whether it be from the Kyuubi or not. After a few minutes of walking through some of the more fancy districts of Konoha, they arrived at the trashier and more suspicious of the town. Zelda expected the boy to continue walking away from this district, but was shocked when Naruto stopped and turned down a side street. The fox disappeared with one single thought as it watched Naruto enter one of the more rundown of the buildings. They have the container of Kyuubi no Kitsune living here. It seems mother must be informed, and she will not be pleased. Naruto awoke the next morning, feeling slightly refreshed after his encounter with the Anbu, Kyuubi, and of course, the little fox that he had never caught the name of. He still wondered where the fox had went as he had not seen it unsummon itself back to where it came from. Oh well, he thought as he stretched and yawned, climbing out of bed. It probably just went back a bit later than expected. He did not know how true that statement was, nor the fact that it had followed him home and spied on him. He looked over at the alarm clock, noting that he still had 2 more hours until training began, and started pulling off his nightcap, and grabbed his hideously orange jumpsuit and Hiate Ite. Walking past the messy bedroom, he went into the small kitchen and put the pot on to boil for some instant ramen. He set his clothes down on the counter. While waiting for the water to boil, he sat on one of the small bar stools around the small counter that occupied most of the kitchen space. He let himself drift over all that he had learned the other day, from Kyuubi being a girl, to the fact that it could now talk to him without the minsape and the horrors that might bring. I still wonder what the hell is up with that. Why is it suddenly communicating with me like this? There isn't a damn reason behind it. The seal is still holding up fine, I can tell that much, but somehow, the Kyuubi talks to me. Maybe I don't know. His thoughts were cut short as the pot started to boil. He jumped off the bar stool and dumped a cup of ramen in the water and headed for the shower to get ready while he waited on the ramen to be done. Throwing open the bathroom door, he walked in, with clothes in hand, and put them on a small alcove beneath the mirror. He pulled off his shirt and boxers, throwing them to the side of the 5 feet by 7 feet bathroom. He turned on the water and let it warm for a second before hopping in and starting to clean himself. He located the soap and started washing his body, rinsing off, and then doing the same with his hair. As he moved to turn off the hot water, however, he caught sight of something that shocked him to the very core. His hand had claws growing where the nails were supposed to be, with tapered points on the very edge of them. His arm, usually hairless for his pubescent form, had thick red hair growing from it. The hair was short, but thick, and a deep blood in color. Examining his other arm, he noted the same problem with it. He jumped out of the shower, not even turning off his water, and looked in front of the mirror. His face was almost the same as usual, but the 3 whisker marks on each cheek were more defined, each having a jagged look to them. His eyes, normally a cerulean blue, had rings of purple on the very edges of them. The purple was an angry, violent-looking color, ranging from a lighter tone to a darker one. "Fucking Cammy," he whispered as he rubbed a hand on one of his cheeks, feeling the indent of one of the whiskers. Snapping out of his trance, he hurriedly shut off the shower and threw on some of his clothes, foregoing his orange jacket, with just his black shirt on. Naruto ran from the bathroom to his bedroom muttering under his breath as he searched through the room, eventually finding a roll of bandage wrappings usually used for medical purposes. He gripped one end of the bandages and started tying it around his hand and arm, stopping the bandages where the fur stopped, at his shoulder. He moved his arm and started doing the same for the other one, ending the bandages in the same spot as before. His hand's mobility was a bit limited with the gauze around it, but he knew that he needed to see someone about this as soon as possible. Kakashi-sense, or Ruka-sensei, or even the Hokage, but he knew that something was wrong and that it needed to be fixed. "Kakashi-sensei, what am I supposed to do?" Naruto wailed as he waved his arms in front of his sensei. Kakashi was floored at seeing Naruto's arms. "I've got fur growing out of my body and I know it's that damn fox's fault." "Well, Naruto," Kakashi said as he inspected the arms, "all I can think of is that you should keep these hidden. Preferably in those bandages. Now, explain what led up to this." So Naruto told him everything, from seeing the fox, to his new summoning ability. "Okay, demonstrate for me this summoning ability of yours. It's definitely not of Konoha's origin. The only summoning contracts currently associated with us are snakes, currently missing, slugs, monkeys, dogs, and toads. A fox contract is unheard of and definitely disturbing." Kakashi watched on as Naruto made a few seals and called out, "Kuchio's no jutsu." In a puff of smoke and without warning, a large red fox jumped out of the smoke. Kakashi had to jump back to avoid being crushed by its pure size. He made it just in time to see a paw land right where he had been moments ago. He looked up and his eyes widened as he saw the creature. It stood at least as tall as Konoha's walls. It was a sleek red in color with 6 tails waving wildly behind it. Its body was thin and muscled, and looked as if it was ready to attack at a moment's notice. Its eyes were alight and colored to look like blood. Its teeth were bared with its canines poking out and its lips bared back. And on top of its head was Naruto. See Kakashi-sensei, I told you, Naruto yelled as he waved his arms around wildly. His furry, uncovered, arms. Who has summoned me? The fox said as it glared down at where Kakashi. Was it you? No, you stupid fox, it was me, Naruto said with pride in his voice and a hint of indignity. He stopped jumping up and down and settled for glaring at the fox. Stupid fox, you would dare address Zemer like that? I'll show you, the fox growled out as it jumped over the nearest Konoha wall and took off with Naruto clutching onto the fur on its head. Naruto screamed as he felt himself take off and without stable ground except the ground that was 50 or so feet below him. Kakashi just watched on as the duo took off and shook his head at them. Naruto, what have you gotten yourself into? Unbeknownst to Kakashi, Naruto, or Zemer, a Konoha Anbu was watching from trees not more than a few yards away. Not just any Anbu, one of Danzo's root Anbu. Naruto laid on his back panting, miles from Konoha. Zemer had vanished in a puff of smoke a few moments ago, after telling Naruto that he had passed the test. The blonde, being Naruto, had jumped to pump his fist in the air, only for the fox to vanish, leaving Naruto 60 feet up in the air with no way down except to free fall. He was too exhausted after the 8-hour ride on the fox to be able to catch himself on some tree branches, and swing to the ground, which had come up fast and hurt an awful lot when he fell straight into it. So instead of doing the normal thing and getting up to go trek the few miles back to the village, Naruto laid under a small canopy of trees, gazing at the stars in the sky and the leaves moving in the soft breeze that was night. Laying back and relaxing was much more preferable to him than getting up and doing anything else. So it made sense that he eventually fell asleep from all the calm that permeated the air. What didn't make sense was his dream. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto stood in front of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's cage, with waves splashing around him. The sewer was being disturbed, and Naruto had to wonder where the hell the fox was, or what was going on. He could not see the fox behind the cage bars, but he could hear shouting. Naruto strained his ears as hard as he could, but no matter what, he still could not hear any of the words that were spoken over the roar of waves crashing around him and the ground shaking. He stopped, and after a few seconds, the cage bars started glowing a menacing red and the fox's blood-colored chakra started bubbling and winding out of its seal. The waves around Naruto turned to restraints as he tried to escape out of the way of the chakra. It still winded its way towards him, no matter how hard he tried, but he wouldn't give up yet. The water around his hands and ankles turned to manacles and started to bubble and evaporate as the demonic chakra gave off an intense heat. Damn it, Fox! What the hell? Naruto shouted out right before the chakra reached him and started flowing around him, causing his skin to start burning. He gave out a last cry of pain before he left his mindscape, not catching the look Kyuubi sent his way, nor her words. Sorry kid, but it's the only way you'll live to see another day. You will need this chakra when you return to your world, if nothing else than to defend yourself properly and keep both of our asses alive. Naruto could barely concentrate on any one sense as all of his senses came rushing back to him at once. Everything around him was blindingly white except for two blurs of black situated no more than a few feet away from him. The faint smell of burning incense pervaded the entire room, clogging up his nose and burning it. A simple and rhythmic beeping of some sort of machine helped calm his rushing heart back down. The simple breeze coming from the hospital window, rustling the fur on his arms. Wait, fur. Hospital. With his eyes finally focusing to the light, he could finally make out the sight of two Anbu situated near the door of the room, eyeing him but still keeping a wary eye on the door. What seemed like blinding white was just the hospital room in itself. White bedsheets, white ceiling, white walls, white vase on his bedside, even the IV monitor was white. Where the hell am I? Naruto shouted as he jumped out of the bed, causing his equilibrium to go off balance from the rush of blood to his head. Still, he glared at the Anbu guarding the door and stalked over to them. I asked where the hell I was. Yet no matter how loud he yelled, neither of the guards would answer him. Finally, frustrated to no small point, he swung a fist at one of the Anbu. He didn't even have enough time to think as his fist was caught in the Anbu's hand. He felt the Anbu twist his arm behind his back and then cold metal, kunai, against his neck. He didn't even have the chance to struggle as he was forcefully tossed onto the bed. Yeah, I don't want to talk to you anyways, Naruto said as he crossed his arms in front of himself, while reflecting on how fast the Anbu moved. I can't believe it, I didn't even see him twitch before he moved, and how he moved. It was so incredible. No Anbu I've ever seen can move like that. He's not normal, and if he is anything to go by, I bet the other guard is just as fast. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about these guys. There is no way I can get out the door with tall, dark, and creepy over there. A window. He looked over at the window and started plotting his escape. It was only a few feet away from him, and if he could set off a distraction, then he would be able to get out. But there was still the problem of his arms. He couldn't run around Konoha in only a hospital gown, and with red fur growing from him, he'd be killed in minutes. Or at least brought to the torture and interrogation squad. He thought. I could stop in a nearby alley and pull on some of my bandages, but the Anbu would get enough time to get me again. I need a big enough distraction that they can't or won't follow me. But what should I do? Coming to an idea, he looked to the guards who were watching him intently, their eyes darting from him to the window as if daring him to try and escape. A smirk fell upon Naruto's lips as he formed a single handseal he knew more than any other. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The hospital room immediately filled with copies of Naruto as the Anbu guards attempted to stop him. One of them drew a blade and charged the main group of clones, eliminating a good number of them in seconds. The rest fell to the other ninja who drew his blade, but stopped right there. For in front of him, what he expected to see a group of Narutos, was instead a group of beautiful blonde girls. He immediately succumbed to blood loss from nosebleed. Transformation complete, Naruto thought as he climbed out of bed and started for the window. Unfortunately, however, he had forgot about the other Anbu, who tried to stop him from escaping, while trying to fight off the horde of clones that were transformed. All of this was the scene one man came onto as he opened the hospital door, tapping the floor with his cane. Two of his elite Anbu, one downed, the other batting off a harem jutsu, and Naruto with one leg out the window and the other barely touching the ground. Well, what have we here? The man with bandages around his face, revealing only one eye. The eye of one Danzo, the war hawk. Well, who the hell are you? Naruto rudely shouted as he pulled his leg out from the window. He stood in front of the man with his arms crossed, and in a hospital gown, but he still acted with some pride and dignity. Foolish boy, the old man sneered. I am part of the Hokage's council, and if need be, the person who will save your life. Naruto twitched at the last part of the statement and stood still, obviously expecting the man to go on. It did not seem that way though, as the man leaned further onto his cane to get comfortable. Well, blah, so what if you're part of the council? Big deal. You're just some old geezer to me. And how can anyone who posts Anbu at my door going to save my life in the first place? Naruto switched his hands behind his head and leaned back, closing his eyes. If the old man wanted to get comfortable, why shouldn't he? Fire raged within Danzo's eyes and he spat out the next words. Well, demon brat, you can't go freely roaming the village with your arms in that condition, now can you? Naruto's eyes shot open and Danzo looked on as they changed from their cerulean blue to a red-tinged purple. In a single bound, Naruto was across the room and holding Danzo by his throat against the wall. The old man still glared at him as the genin spoke in a demonic tone. Do you have a death wish, mortal? It's because of you and the whole damn council that I have to live like this. That I was beaten within an inch of my life almost every day, all until I could finally stand up for myself, and even then, the only thing stopping you all was the Hokage's threats. As for my birthday, the torture got worse and worse on those days from all the mobs of drunken and angry villagers. I will not stand to be called a monster or demon ever again. Spittle was flying from Naruto's mouth as he virtually screamed at the man. But still, the only thing the man did was glare at Naruto. Fine then, Uzumaki. He was cut off by Naruto squeezing his throat until he couldn't talk. So it's Uzumaki, now huh? No more, demon brat, or other things of the like. Well, let me tell you something, you old wretch. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Also known as a monster by almost the entire village, the future Hokage, and if you don't stop the insults and threats, your executioner. Naruto finally lowered Danzo to the ground, his grip finally slackening as his eyes changed back to their normal color and he swayed on the spot. Danzo coughed for a moment and rubbed his hands on his neck where there were fingerprints imprinted into his neck. Well then, Danzo said after another cough. I can see that you don't want my offer, so I might as well leave. Good luck with those. He looked pointedly at Naruto's arms and then turned to the door. Wait, Naruto exclaimed. I guess I'll hear you out. Unknown to Naruto, Danzo was rubbing his hands together evilly. Naruto turned his back on the man and climbed into the bed, exhausted, while Danzo took the chair just a few feet away from the bed. All right, Danzo proposed as he laced his fingers in a Sasuke-like fashion. I will go straight to business. 1. I can tell the villagers and the council about your problem, he indicated Naruto's arms. Or 2, you let me train you and you join my route. It's your choice, but the fact remains that I hold all the cards here. If you go along with the second choice, you will be under my power and jurisdiction. If you go with the first choice, you will most likely be killed or exiled from the village and be forced to become a missing nin. Naruto was visibly shaken by this news. What the hell am I supposed to do? This guy is a creep, and being trained by him. Not going to be enjoyable. If I'm kicked out of the village, I won't be able to be Hokage and my dream will mean nothing. There will be nothing for me, and I doubt I'd make it as a missing nin for long. Oh, what the fuck? Danzo drummed his fingers together, enjoying seeing Naruto in such a situation. The boy was backed into a hole, with his dreams, his life, and everything he cared about on the line. I will give you 1 day to decide, Danzo said as he stood up. Meet me at this address tomorrow by sundown if you wish to be trained by me. If not, then use this as a head start to get away, and fast, because the Hokage may be able to stop his Anbu from following you, but mine will hunt you down and kill you. Slowly and painfully, he slipped a small slip of paper onto Naruto's lap before exiting the room, via door. Damn it, Naruto said as his shaking worsened. I really hate that guy. In a large room in the Hokage tower sat an old man in the Hokage robes, before a mountain of paperwork. He simply stared at the bane of his existence, of any cage's existence paperwork. If he could, he would just use a Kaiden jutsu to destroy it all and dance on the ashes, but he knew that it wouldn't be a good idea. The mound was literally over his head, and he was prolonging the inevitable, having to do all this. He sighed as he put his tobacco pipe away, preparing to finish this here and now, when a small distraction occurred. A distraction that he was unprepared for, but still happy to receive, if only to stall the work a bit longer. Hello, Naruto-kun, he spoke as a soft breeze wafted in from the open window, where his adoptive grandson was sitting. What brings you here today? Naruto jumped down from the window and walked across the room to the Hokage, so that he was standing in front of his desk. He could barely see the old man from all the paperwork piled up, adding to his irritation from Danzo's threats. Cut the crap, old man. Now, would you please give me all the information you have on Danzo and his route? I need to get this done and over with soon. Looking at the aged boy in front of him, the old Hokage felt something well up in him. Naruto, how do you know about him? I made sure that he had never affected you in any way. You shouldn't have even met the man. Naruto could feel his adoptive grandfather's gaze falter at him. He felt his own eyes turn to him over the mound of paper and look at the old man. Look, Gigi. Naruto started explaining about Danzo's threat, the Kyuubi, the summoning scroll, and lastly, his furry arms. So what should I do? The man gives me really creepy bad feelings and I don't trust him. I can't just up and leave the village. No matter how bad they are, I still have people here who are precious to me, and I can't just leave them behind. Sarutobi looked at the boy, who was on the brink of crying, for a few moments before getting up out of his chair and putting a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. Do not worry, Naruto-kun. I will make sure it is handled properly. In the meantime though, I want you to go home and grab some clothes and your ninja tools. You need to have the necessities ready in case Danzo pulls any more of this foolishness, or I cannot convince him not to act. He sighed once at what he was to tell the boy next. It would break his heart. But Naruto, if he continues with this, I want you to run. Run and never look back. I will eventually send someone to look after you, and I want you to give the something when they do find you. The Hokage got up from in front of the boy and walked so he was behind his desk. He pulled open a drawer and pulled out a regular-looking scroll with the Hokage's seal on it. Tossing it to Naruto, he turned around and sent some chakra into the wall. A blood seal appeared and after wiping a bloody finger across it, a section of the wall vanished. Inside of it were two large skulls, with notes attached to each one. He turned around and stood in front of Naruto once more. Naruto, these scrolls are from your parents. Naruto was shocked at the revelation and the tears that had been threatening to spill, came crashing down. Gigi, why didn't you tell me this before now? The voice coming from him was heartbreaking, an extremely sad tone that was almost broken. Why didn't you tell me I had parents when I was younger, when it could have helped change my life? Naruto, he sighed, I did it for your own protection. Your father had many enemies, as did your mother and her clan. That is why I had to tell the villagers that in a last act, she gave her name to an unknown orphan. If I had told them that she was actually your mother, you could have long since been killed. It is the mistake of a foolish old man, and one that I take responsibility for, full-heartedly. I shouldn't be telling you till you are older, but you need to know now, or you may die without knowing even their names. Who were they then? Naruto asked, no longer able to look at the face of the Hokage. Naruto-kun, you will have to find that out on your own. Those scrolls will tell you their names, what they did, and some of the possessions they left you, including a note from each one. But Naruto, he lifted the boy's chin up with a finger. I don't want you to look at these scrolls until, or if, you have to leave the village. I'm only doing this now because I expect that if you leave, it will be a while before you may return. Naruto nodded dumbstruck and walked out of the Hokage tower to go home. Unbeknownst to them, Sai, a relatively new operative to Root, had been sitting undetectable, outside of the Hokage's office since the boy had arrived. He quickly left, mumbling about how this was something Danzo needed to hear soon. Naruto stood in his home, or soon-to-be desolated place, throwing his most precious things in a small backpack. In went a picture of Team 7, extra kunai, shuriken, and some scrolls. The last things to go were the fox summoning contract and a picture of his graduating class from the academy. In the front row sat Sasuke, brooding as always, with Sakura and Ino fighting for dominance of the seat beside him. In the middle row was Hinata, fighting a blush, with Naruto on one side of her and Kiba on the other. They both had their arms thrown over her shoulder, with Naruto holding up a peace sign and grinning, while Kiba had rabbit ears up behind Hinata. In the very last row was Shino, emotionally stoic as always, with Choji and Shikamaru beside him. Choji was munching on a bag of chips as always, while Shikamaru seemed to be asleep on his feet, mainly leaning on Choji for support. Behind them were the Hokage, who happened to drop by for a visit that day, and Iruka. The image seemed fuzzy as tears fell down from Naruto's face, crashing down on the picture of all his friends and comrades. Friends and comrades he may never see again because of a fox and a man that wanted nothing more than to torture him. The picture started crumbling in Naruto's hand as his eyes gained a new determination in them. I will do this. No matter what, I will make it. His voice was strong, confident, everything he was trying to convince himself of actually being. Okay, all I have to do is act normal and try to make it. It shouldn't be too hard. Besides, this is Konoha, I doubt they'll just chase me out. He left his house, not knowing how much he'd come to regret the words he spoke, and never knowing that he wouldn't ever step foot in the small apartment again. Walking at a measured pace, he left the apartment grounds to wander Konoha, looking at it all with wide eyes and childlike innocence. This was his home, a beautiful village, and he might soon be kicked out. It was hard to take in as he walked the streets, his feet uncowingly taking him in a direction he knew all too well. A few minutes later, and he was standing in front of his most favorite places, Ichiraku's. Waving aside the orange tent flap, he walked in to see Ayame serving 3 customers and Tuki in the back, cooking. He walked right up to the counter without a thought, and waved to the Ichiraku's. Hey, Ayame, can I get 4 bowls of miso ramen please? He yelled out to her. She gave him a small smile before turning away to give the order to her father. Naruto? Asked an unusually quiet voice from beside him. He looked over to see Ino sitting just 2 seats away from him. Beside her were her teammates, Choji and Shikamaru. What are you doing here? Well, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head, this is my favorite restaurant, so I came here to eat. What are all you doing here? Well, Choji said, eating a bag of chips, I remember Munch you telling us before Munch that this was the best Munch place to buy ramen in Konoha, Munch, so we decided to try it. Ino immediately slapped the back of his head, mumbling about not eating while talking. All the while, Shikamaru sat at the chair with his head on the counter, half asleep. Yeah, it is pretty good, Naruto said while moving a few seats over so he was beside Ino. So, how have you guys been since the academy? All I've heard is that your sensei is the Hokage's son. Yeah, Ino snorted. But he's as big of a bum as Shikamaru over there. All he does is have us do teamwork, exercises, and then play shugi and go. Hee hee, that's pretty funny. But at least your sensei isn't late to every team meeting, and has his whole face covered by a mask, Naruto retorted. Speaking of teams, Naruto, Shikamaru drawled with his head still down, did yours almost kill you or something? You never wore bandages on your arms before. Naruto internally cursed himself. He thought no one would really pay attention to the bandages, but Shikamaru, though a lazy bum, had to be smarter than he let on. Oh, it's nothing, he said casually. Just a small training accident. Nothing to really worry about. He cringed at having to lie, but he knew that they couldn't know what this all was or they would act like all the other villagers. Are you sure it's okay? Ino asked in a concerned voice as she reached out to touch his arm. I know some basic medical ninjutsu from my mother if you need it. Nah, every time I get hurt it heals really quickly, Naruto lied once more as he pulled his arm away from hers with a shiver. He felt a stab of guilt for lying but quickly overcame it. It was necessary to keep them all from knowing. They truly couldn't know. Besides, our ramen's here. He quickly turned away from her to the bowls of food placed in front of him, not noticing the hurt look on her face or the curious one on Shikamaru's. Both Naruto and Choji started gulping down their ramen bowls at the exact same time, and coincidentally, finished 2.5 minutes later. They both sat there, leaning back in their chairs with contented sighs, as Shikamaru continued to slowly eat his soup and Ino watched them in odd disgustedness. Ew, Ino finally let out. I cannot believe how you two can both do that and not feel the need for table manners or even tasting it. You're supposed to eat slowly, bakas. Ino, just let it go, Shikamaru sighed in his usual bored tone, while putting in a mumbled, what a drag. Well, hey you guys, it was nice catching up, but I gotta run, Naruto said as he got up off of the stool used for a seat. Turning around, he hit right into a person, knocking them both down. Ow! Naruto yelled as he fell on his rear. What the hell? Naruto, you baka, Naruto heard as a fist slammed into his head. He nursed his head for a second to find Sakura standing above him, and Sasuke on his ass a few feet away. Dobi, Sasuke muttered and got up, knocking away Sakura's hand, and leaned his head out the tent flaps. Kakashi, we found him. He ducked back inside and stood arrogantly with his hands in his pockets as he waited for their sensei to show up. Sasuke Tem, Sakura-chan, Naruto said as he righted himself and stood up. Looking over just in time to see Kakashi enter the tent with his nose in his book, he wondered what they had been looking for him for. Yo, Kakashi greeted. What the hell are you guys looking for me for? Naruto said as he glared at Sasuke. Isn't it obvious, Dobi? You missed training this morning, and we had to do all the missions ourselves. Now, Sasuke, I'm sure Naruto has a good reason for missing training, isn't that right, Naruto? Kakashi asked as he settled a hand on Sasuke's shoulder and gave Naruto an eye smile. Yeah, Naruto waved it off. You know that problem I came to you about, Kakashi-sensei. At seeing Kakashi turn serious and give a nod he continued. I need to talk to you privately about that. Warhawk found out about it and I had to tell Gigi. Kakashi straightened up and a serious look replaced the lazy one in his eye. He indicated outside the tent as Naruto turned to leave. Don't worry, Kakashi said as he talked to the Sakura and Sasuke. Me and Naruto just need to talk about something. We'll meet you tomorrow at the training grounds. He quickly turned away from the totally confused group and led Naruto down the street and a couple more streets down until, after a few minutes, they arrived at their training grounds. Now, Naruto, what all happened with the Warhawk and the Hokage? Explain everything. Naruto quickly explained everything he could, down to the last detail, and in just a few breaths. And so Gigi told me to pack everything I could up, and make sure that I'm ready in case I have to leave the village at a moment's notice. Wow, Naruto, Kakashi sighed as they sat down, you must have some of the worst luck out of all your teammates. I know, sensei, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it all, Naruto whined. I think the Hokage has it all under control, Naruto. You should think more on the positive side, Kakashi said as he gave his blonde student a smile and rubbed the top of said blonde student's head. What positive side? I can't really think of one at this moment, Kakashi said as Naruto's sweat dropped. Whatever sensei, Naruto said as he got up, with his pack still on, and prepared to leave. I need to get back to my apartment to pack my clothes in case I do have to leave. Okay, Naruto, Kakashi said before popping out of existence in a cloud of smoke, leaving Naruto to walk back to his apartment. Sunset was upon the village hidden in the leaves as Naruto strolled slowly, still taking in all the sights he could, when he spotted a faint shimmer of light down the street. He was near the village gates, right on the main road in Konoha, and heading his way looked like fire almost. He felt panic seize up in him and felt himself still as a mob of villagers, with weapons ranging from pitchforks to torches, to katanas in their hands. Scattered among the villagers were several ninja, and the occasional Anbu, easily identified by their vests or robes. And in the front looked like a man leaning on a cane, heavily bandaged, with a person of extremely pale complexion beside him. Danzo and Sai. What the hell? Naruto mumbled as he backed up farther down the road, away from all the villagers. He stumbled backwards for a moment, and tripped, landing on his rear, but still supporting himself with his hands. He could hear their shouts and jeers as they raced down the road to get him, the two people leading the crowd suddenly vanishing into it. He could feel the heat from the torches, his eyes widened impossibly so in fear, sweat pouring down from his face. Memories flashed through his mind of villagers and ninja alike hurting him. Get away from me, demon. I'm no demon. Kill the piece of trash. No one will miss him anyways. Why are you hitting me? Please, just leave me alone. Who could ever love a demon spawn like you? Now get away from those girls. I was just trying to be nice to them. No one else was. A little boy of around 4 or 5, rocking back and forth, sewer water up to mid-chest. Why doesn't anyone care for me? Why does everyone hate me? Tears poured from his eyes, leaving salty tracks barely visible in the darkness. His shirt was tattered and torn, barely passable as a black piece of cloth, his shorts ripped at the knees. All was quiet except the boy's sobs, but a voice suddenly came from above. Kid, why do you cry? Why do you let them do this to you? Why do you not stand up for yourself? Because I'm not strong enough, the boy choked out between sobs. And because this is the only place I can call home. I have nowhere else to go. Tell me, boy, if I could give you a place to call home and power, would you join me? If I could offer you protection, a mentor, and a place to sleep at night, would you come to my side? Yes, the little boy said as he stood on wobbly legs, anything. Naruto stood in front of the villagers, his head down and tears making their way down his face. His blonde hair shadowed his face, making it impossible to identify any of his features. The little boy's tears turned from water to blood, tainting the sewer water around him as he finally stood fully, fists clenched at his sides. Blood started seeping through the water, making it a dull pink. The smell of rust filled the air. Naruto clenched his fists tighter at his side, blood pouring from the open wound on his palm, caused from his own fingernails. The villagers were almost upon him, less than 100 feet away. The boy glared up fiercely at the sky, his tears vanishing as the red rose from the water, forming a cloak around him. Naruto's neck snapped as his head whipped up to glare at the villagers. His eyes red and slitted, red chakra seeping from his every pore. The bandages wrapped around his arms burned off, almost like they were catching on fire. The red fur underneath caught the light, reflecting off as he crouched down in a defensive posture with his hands raised to claw apart everyone and everything. The boy looked at the fox in the cage in front of him. Naruto glared at the villagers now only 30 feet away. They both spoke at the same time. Quote, I will not die. Quote, I will kill you. Ready to fight. Naruto lunged at the nearest villager, not even seeing what he was doing as he slashed and lunged. Weapons grazed him, some even went through various parts of his body, leaving open wounds that healed in seconds. Blood flew around him, some of it from a chest he'd just ripped open on a woman civilian, some of it from a ninja who had tried to hit him with a Fuma shuriken, only to have it caught out of midair and thrown right back at him. All he knew was that he wanted blood, revenge, for all the years of torment and name-calling, from a decade's worth of assassination attempts. All of it unleashed full force on a small army of people who thought they could so easily kill him. They had no idea what they had finally unleashed. Naruto finally finished ravaging his way through the first line of people, mainly civilians, with another 3 or 4 lines of ninjas and villagers alike in front of him. 60 or so people left. He swayed there for a moment, almost catching his breath, as he prepared to charge the next line of people. However, that was not meant to be as he felt a sharp pain in his gut. He looked down, surprised to see a long katana protruding through his chest. Die demon, he heard a feminine voice whisper in his ear as the purple-haired Anbu behind him twisted her sword, with it still impaled in Naruto. The blonde felt extreme pain as blood poured from the wound, white-hot flashes traveling up his spine every second, reminding him to get away while he had a chance at survival. The sword was pulled from his gut as the two chakra tails behind him started dissipating, leaving him with almost no chakra to do anything, much less get away. He coughed blood as he fell to his knees, barely able to hold on to consciousness. His hands started forming seals, too fast for anyone to stop him, but too slow for a man that had Shimigami grinning above him. He drew blood and pushed his hand to the ground, barely able to get out a Kuchio's no jutsu, before his vision started fading. The last thing he saw was a white blur grabbing him and running. What the hell? My whole body hurts like crazy, Naruto said to himself as he laid there in the darkness. He had yet to open his eyes, still wondering if he'd see heaven, hell, or just a blank space of nothing. He knew he had to be dead, that much couldn't be more obvious. After all, who can live through having their systems flushed through with demonic yokai and be beaten by a mob? Naruto knew that he had survived before, but that was because the fox's chakra. But now, that was the cause for his aching body in the first place, not including the wounds from where weapons had pierced him. Still, he had the will to go on, and he knew he needed to, if for nothing else than to prove the village wrong and that he wasn't weak. That he would be the strongest out there, in all the elemental nations. Against some part of himself, he pushed his eyes open. Everything was blurry and hazy, some things not even recognizable. Everything in front of him was black, never-ending black. Off to the sides, he could see faint glows of reds, oranges, and blues. He concentrated harder and was able to make out that whatever was in front of him was a ceiling, and the sides were just walls made up of pipes. Red and blue pipes streaked along the corridor, creating an almost orange glow. Forcing his body to move, he slowly got up by gripping the pipes along the walls, which let off a bout of steam after he had let it go. After a minute or two, he stood on wobbly legs panting. Damn, I must be really out of shape if this exhausts me so much, Naruto thought to himself as he swallowed a few more gulps of air. I need to start training harder if I want to be stronger than Sasuke Tem. He slowly started walking down the hall, the splashing of the water with every footstep helping calm him to a degree. He knew he couldn't be dead, especially if he was stuck in here with the fox. Chances are that he was knocked out on the street somewhere, cold and abandoned in an alley. Finally reaching the end of the hall, he started into the cavernous room that seemed to hold the Kyuubi captive for as long as he lived. He was surprised though, when he walked up to the giant gates and saw that there was something wrong with the seal. The usual white paper with a kanji on it was soaked through with water, and was bleeding some of the ink off. The worst part was that red chakra was eating at the edges of it, deteriorating it almost. Hey fox, he shouted into the dark cage. What the hell is going on? What happened to the seal? Upon receiving no answer he tried again. Hello? Anyone there? Just barely. He could hear the soft pit-pat of paws walking towards him. I'm coming, stupid human, a surprisingly soft and distinctly feminine voice muttered as whatever it was coming closer. At the sight that greeted him, Naruto almost fell on his butt with a nosebleed. It looked like the fox, the great Kyuubi no Kitsune, was gone, and in its place a beautiful woman. She had long, red hair that reached about mid-waist. Her skin, a creamy white coloring that had such a shine to it that Naruto couldn't help but feel a bit of blood leak from his nose. Her eyes, while giving him a glare, were red, a deep bloody red that any person could get lost in. But what made Naruto fall was that she was nude. Completely. The 12-year-old genin couldn't help but fall back, blood flying from his nose as the person in the cage sweat dropped. What the hell? She screamed at him as his eyes rolled in the back of his head. Hey, you talk that back, whoever you are. Naruto shouted as he pointed at the girl with one hand while using the other to wipe his nose. He wasn't a pervert or anything, but a beautiful girl suddenly showing up in his mindscape was not a usual thing to deal with, certainly not something he ever thought would happen. Boy, she growled out at Naruto, her canines bared. I believe that we had already had this discussion before. I am the great Kyuubi, no matter what form I take. This is just one of the many available to me. Well, whatever, can you at least put some clothes on, lady? Naruto screamed right back at her. Huffing, she stood still for a moment before a plain brown cloak settled across her shoulders. It may have been a drab color, but it did its job, reaching down to her ankles and covering every part of her body except for her neck and head. There, Uzumaki, does that make you feel better? She complained to him in an annoyed voice. Yep. He smirked at her for a moment before a curious look settled on his face. But if you have a human form, why do you always take the big fox shape? I mean, isn't being human better than a giant fox that has almost no room in there? I prefer my fox form over all others, simply because it was the natural shape that Kami made me into. In my weakened state though, I couldn't hold the shape as easily and had to go for this watered-down human form. It's considerably weaker than my other forms, thus easier to command and hold. Wait, how did you get weakened? Naruto asked as he scratched the back of his head for a moment. Wait, was it because all of the shouting and demonic energy from before? Does that have anything to do with it? Lucky guess, she mumbled under her breath before leaning on the cage bars in front of her. Yes, I am weakened because of that. But also from healing you twice, and the taxing amount of chakra that comes from your arms now. Couple that with the chakra that the seal usually takes, and you see that I have lost a small amount of it. Although I do have nearly unlimited reserves, my control of it is minuscule. Alright then, Naruto said as he got to his feet. What was all the yelling about and what did you do to my arms? Well, as to your first question, someone invaded your mind, and attempted to comb through it. Fortunately for you, before they could do such a thing, I took control of the situation and got rid of them. However, as to your second one, you will have to wait and see what they can do. But here is one little hint. By giving you those, I probably saved your life. When you came here, I was trying to flush out the intruder with my chakra, which hit you as well. Pure Yukai covering you did some damage to you, but the worst of it was in your arms, so I had to give you newer and better ones. Okay, Naruto replied as he narrowed his eyes in suspicion. One last thing. Why are you being so cooperative? Usually you oppose me at every turn unless it benefits you to some extent. And how is this any different? She retorted. I will eventually seek a favor and will need your help with it. I do not know the full parts of it yet, but it will help better your training and give me some small freedom. Now, our time together has been short, but it is time for you to go. And just a few seconds later, Naruto vanished from sight before he could form a reply. Sighing, she sat down on the wet ground. I have no idea what I've gotten myself into with this new container. Sometimes I wish I were still in Kushina. She almost never came by, and I very rarely had to do anything but give some chakra and sleep.